these videos, we're aiming to create an online library where if you don't manage to come to Full Circle or any of our events that we think are worth putting up, you can come in your own time and look at this video and learn about the topic.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for having me today. My name is Debbie Thackray and I am from B Lab UK and I'm the Community Engagement Manager. And so I'm going to be talking to you today about the B Corp movement, what it is, how it aims to change our economic system, and how we try and then shift that narrative to focus more on benefiting people and planet rather than just making profit. So I'm going to talk to you for about 10-15 minutes and then it will be followed by the panel discussion. So first of all, I thought I would start with what a B Corp is. Some of you may already know this, some of you may have never heard of it. So essentially a certified B Corp or B Corporation is a company that meets the highest standards of social and environmental performance, and that's through their submission and verification of the B Impact Assessment. And this is done through our kind of standards analyst team. And the B Impact Assessment is essentially a free online tool, and it helps companies to understand their positive impact on people and planet as a business. And then in addition to doing the assessment, B Corps are then also required to legally commit to the consideration of the impact of their decisions on all of their stakeholders, so not just their shareholders. And this is to ensure that the people and planet conversation is as important as the profit, so it kind of sits alongside it in the same importance. And the legal commitment is achieved through amending their articles of association, which are obviously registered with Companies House and are public for people to be able to see. So both the assessment and the legal change are very transparent, and that's a way for us to ensure the kind of authentic commitment of companies to the actions that they wish to create and what they do through the assessment. And the movement itself has been around for quite a while. So it was established in the United States in 2006, and then specifically the UK hub started about 5 years ago. We're a global community, as you can see from the slide. We've grown very rapidly, especially in the last year. And so the kind of way that our community is supported and the way that it works is through a network of what we call country partners. And they sit across 6 different continents, and all of them kind of interconnect back into B Lab Global, which is still based in the US. So there's currently 10 global partner hubs, and they represent B Labs in 36 different countries. And then B Corps within those B Lab communities are representative of 75 countries. So just some, I guess, useful information about the community. As a collective global community, we've actually just hit 4,000 companies of certified B Corps. And then specifically in the UK, we have, I think, just around 500. So we're quite a significant chunk, which is amazing. And then when you're also considering the kind of impact and influence that we're trying to have and the depth and breadth of the conversation and we're trying to influence, when you look at it from a sector perspective, the community that we have also represents 150 different industries. So we're very much trying to ensure that we're challenging change and influencing other companies to think differently across as many sectors and as many different industries as we possibly can. And then from a collective combined revenue perspective and the way that we are trying to influence change through a financials perspective, our global community actually equates to over 80 billion, which is the equivalent of the GDP of Guatemala. So we are growing, we have been growing for a while, and it's amazing to see how big our movement has got and how many B Corps there are around the world. So with that being said, why are we doing this? Why are B Corps here? Why do they exist? What are they trying to do? So we built the B Corp movement because we recognize that we are seeing systems failure occurring all over the world. So whether that be societal or economic in nature. And in 2019 and 2020, I think most people would agree, we saw a particular kind of level of unprecedented protesting and raising concerns from society around loads of different conversations. So whether that be environmental concerns about accelerating climate change risks, government and businesses' potential inaction in response to those challenges, or diversity and inclusion protests about gender equality and Black Lives Matter happening all over the world and continuing to this day. These are all things that we consider to be impacts that are systems failures. And so this is obviously something that we then reflected on and recognized is also paralleled within our economic model. And this is a model which is currently run on a system that is no longer fit for purpose, where we focus on shareholder returns, where we focus on short-term planning, and where we are unresponsive to the increasingly limited resources that the planet has to provide us with. So essentially the B Corp movement is about recognizing that our system is broken and the placement of shareholders' interests above all others is no longer viable. So instead, we want to shift that focus to putting stakeholders at the heart of every business. So essentially harnessing the power of businesses to influence and transform what their role is in society to help rebuild trust, engage within transparency and honesty, and that commitment to change, which they do through the assessment. So in essence, B Corp and the movement is about reinventing capitalism, putting stakeholders at the heart of your businesses, and ensuring then that everything is working for people and planet, not just for profit. And we're actually seeing a really significant increase in conversation around upending shareholder primacy by moving towards an economic system focused on stakeholder capitalism. So clearly we're being heard, which is incredible. Mentions in the press between 2019 and 2020 actually increased by 397%. And despite the global pandemic, we've seen huge interest in the B Corp movement, and it's continually proving to us that there is increasing demand for a better model of business, which is obviously what we want to hear. And then reflecting specifically on the UK, we really saw this during B Corp month this year. So that's 1 month a year, where we encourage our community to shout about the certification, what their score is, how they attained it, and where they want to move forward and do better. So as a consequence of that 1 month alone, we actually saw over 1,000 companies sign up to the assessment to begin that journey of becoming a B Corp, or even if it's just to begin that journey of measuring their impact, which is absolutely incredible. And from a perspective of kind of growth of our community, we're also really seeing that specifically in the UK. So we are actually the fastest growing B Corp community in the world, which we're very proud of. And London actually acts as the city and the hub with the most B Corps based anywhere around the world. So we have over 200 based just in that one city alone. And in addition to being heard and the conversation being heard, we're also starting to notice that we're getting recognized. So whether that is in press mentions or conversations that are happening, but actually with quite large players in different fields as well. So there's quite a few multiple large retailers that have started encouraging a focus on the B Corp movement from a consumer perspective, where they're creating platforms that help shout about the certification, what it means, and enable consumers to shop through them. So we actually now have an Ocado B Corp shop, a Boots B Corp shop, and a Waitrose B Corp shop, which is really brilliant because then it's helping shoppers and consumers understand which brands align with their personal values and the way that they would like businesses to start to transform for the betterment of society and the environment. So it's a really interesting rise in retailers and really large multinational companies starting to recognize the value of B Corp and obviously talk about us, which we always encourage. So in reflection of that, we're kind of talking about what B Corp is, the why that we're doing that. The how is then obviously really important to help you understand what really goes into being a B Corp. And so to reflect on the how and how we've built our community, we essentially hope to capture the power within all businesses to measure their impact with as much rigor as they measure their profits. And by doing so, create an inclusive and lasting prosperity that equitably meets society's and our planet's needs. So there's 3 specific ways that we're aiming to essentially do that. So firstly, as I mentioned, it's through our globally standardized assessment, so the B Impact Assessment. The kind of key thing to note here is that it is a continuously adapting and evolving assessment. So no company will ever sit the same assessment twice. It's reviewed every 3 years with feedback being gained from our global community, research being done to help make sure that the questions that are asked of companies are always to the highest possible standards of environmental and social performance, so that our community is also always striving to improve and always do more. So becoming a B Corp is very much about starting your journey. It's not about kind of getting certification and then you end it. It's very much about where do you go from here? How do you keep going forwards? How do you keep moving and improving? The second piece of the assessment that is quite unique and what makes a B Corp unique is that it is a certification that focuses on the entirety of a business's operations. And I'll kind of talk to that in a second, but it's different from others where they might kind of review a part of a supply chain or a component of a product. We literally look at every part of your business and ask you to prove what you're doing. So then the second piece, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is around that kind of legal change, which we call mission log. So this is quite unique in the sense that we are getting our community, our companies that are joining us to make a commitment to the legal change, which means that they are baking our movement and kind of the purpose that we're trying to drive, which is putting stakeholders at the center of their business into their legal DNA and the kind of way that they govern their company and the structure of their company. And this is something that we found really helps move their commitment from words to that kind of legal structure, ensuring accountability. And then the final piece in this is actually the recognition that, as I mentioned before, there's 4,000 companies in this conversation, and that's increasing every day. And so it's really about joining a global movement of like-minded businesses and building a community of leaders who want their businesses to be a force for good, who want to champion change, and who want to ensure people and the planet are as important as possible. So with that in mind, a really fundamental piece of that global movement and kind of the shift of the culture alongside that economic model shift is something that we call the B Corp Declaration of Interdependence. And this is a really fundamental component of why it's important for us and why kind of collective action and the recognition that we are interdependent as a cohort of businesses is so important. So we therefore have this declaration, which was created in 2007. And it basically declares the simple truth that businesses should work for everyone. They recognize that all humans are connected and that business does not operate in a vacuum. So it declares that you care about the people who work for you, the communities in which you do business, and the environment that you both rely upon for resources, but also to live in as a human being. It declares that businesses as a whole should work for more than just themselves and their shareholders. It should work for everyone. And this declaration redefines what success in business essentially looks like and what the leaders of those companies should be considering to ensure that they compete not only to be the best in the world, but also to be best for the world. And so as business leaders and now as B Corps, when they join our community, it's really about kind of coming together and sharing best practices and embedding it into your culture and focusing on that continuous improvement to just always striving to do more and to be better. And then, as I promised earlier, the kind of assessment piece actually then is really interesting when we look at what we actually look at. So we cover 5 specific areas that are kind of the big buckets, and those are governance, workers, environment, community, and customers. And across those different areas, companies are asked on average around 200 questions. It has different tracks depending on the industry that you're in or the size of company that you are, but those 200 questions ask and demand of you that you provide data and document proof against every single one, which is then verified by an independent standard analyst. And any score above 0 is actually a positive score, which is great, because this indicates that a company is doing something positive for society and the environment beyond just kind of the standard business operations. So on average, most companies kind of the first time they do the assessment will score anywhere between 40 and 100. And the minimum score that we ask of companies to certify as an actual B Corp is 80. So it's quite a range, but obviously all of it's positive. We encourage any company to kind of come onto this journey, but to become a B Corp, you have to hit that 80 mark. And the highest score that's ever been achieved has actually sat between 160 to 170. So it's quite a lot of range in there for companies to kind of move and improve and keep driving the conversation. Excuse me. And so finally, I just thought I'd also mention then a link back to the transparency piece of you've made your legal change, you've completed the assessment, you've focused on your continuous improvement and driving change, you've joined the community and you're starting to give back and to share best practices and to learn from others. And then the kind of final piece of the puzzle is around being transparent and talking about that journey so that others can come along with you. And so one of the things that we focus on is what we call B impact reports. So Innocence is currently on the screen, which is a really great example. And we have a collection of these that we can share after this if you're interested in reading any. But essentially these are a middle year between your kind of assessment. So the first year you do it and your third year when you recertify, because you have to recertify in cycles of 3 years. This is for companies to narrate their journey, to talk about where they've got to, how they're scoring, where they've made progress, where they've still got progress to be made, and kind of raise the bar of transparency to actually put it out there and say, we want to try and achieve this, and here's how we're getting on. And we hope that when we recertify, we're going to get these points and we're going to have done this, this, and this. And so it's a really great way for companies to authentically talk about their experiences in a way that isn't greenwashing or seeming disingenuous. And so then the final piece then is just, sorry, excuse me, if you are interested in learning more about B Corp, or if you have any questions, obviously there's a panel discussion, but a really great place for you to have a look at what being a B Corp means and what that looks like is our website. So we specifically have created one for the UK, and it narrates our journey over the last 5 years. it's got really great examples of B Corps from our community, testimonials, statistics, information. And so if anyone has any other questions, this would just be a really great place for you to have a look at and see what you can find. So I will end there and hand back over. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Great, that's really great presentation. Thank you very much, Debbie. Gives us just a bit more in-depth perspective of what B Corp is and kind of what it means. And I guess now the best thing to do is go straight into the panel. I think if we start out with everyone just introducing themselves, it would be great just so that any viewers know who you are and kind of what your role is and then kind of what section of the chain, the value chain you work in. So let's just start, I guess let's start from the producer. So if we start with Isabella.
Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Isabella. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Daterra Coffee. Daterra is a coffee farm from Brazil. We produce specialty coffee in large volumes under sustainable practices. We were the first Rainforest Alliance coffee farm in Brazil in 2002, and we became the first B Corp coffee farm in Brazil in 2016. We've been researching, and I believe we are the only coffee farm in the world that is a B Corp, because we have Rua Valdez as a co-op, we have other companies, but as a coffee producer. And the idea to become a B Corp was pretty innovative in the coffee business. So we faced many challenges, but I will let you know later.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And then I guess let's just keep going and moving through. So Phil from DRWakefield.
Well, as Deanna said, I'm Phil from DRWakefield. I'm senior coffee trader here. Been here for 9 years, buying Daterra's delicious coffee and offering it to roasters such as Damien. So yeah, there we are.
Perfect. And I guess then that's perfect to then go ahead and carry on to Damien.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Damien from Darkwoods Coffee in West Yorkshire in the UK. So we've been roasting coffee now for around about 7 years. Myself, Ian and Paul set up the business to try, we all came from various parts of the coffee industry and wanted to do something that was genuinely enjoyable to do, to work within for ourselves and for anybody that kind of came and worked for us. And to kind of absorb some of the things that we'd effectively done in the past. So we've been developing since that point, say 7 years in, and the roastery's moved along nicely. But we've been very lucky down the years, long relationship with DRWakefield, and for myself personally, I've been working with them since before those times as well, and working back as well. Also, we don't work with the Daterra farm at the moment. I have to say that back in 2003, that was probably one of my first coffee trips that I ever had the joy to effectively go on and actually to see how coffee farms weren't just about handing over a product. That realization that there was so much regarding the work, the effort that was done out at origin, the care and attention to environment and quality and to detail. And I'd like to thank Isabella for that. If it wasn't for that kind of moment, I wouldn't have got to the point where we are now. So yeah, thank you again.
Amazing. Yeah, and then I think it is quite a special moment to have like the three sides of those kind of points in the chain, in that sense, being then in a B Corp situation. So it's brilliant. I guess let's just let Debbie then go ahead and introduce, and she is from, in fact, B Corp and has presented a lovely presentation for us around it.
Thanks. Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here. So my name is Debbie and I'm the Community Engagement Manager, and my role at B Lab is essentially focused on when a company steps into the community, how do I help all of those companies come together and share best practices and have really great conversations around common topics where they can kind of drive conversation forwards and share all of their different insights and learning and knowledge in the best possible way. And that's something we're really proud of, in particular in the UK, because it's different all around the world, but we really love that our kind of members step into that conversation and really give everything, which is incredible.
Amazing, Debbie, and thank you so much for the presentation. It was, I think, quite useful to go ahead and start this conversation. So in the kind of start of this, I think we can start with actually, why did you go B Corp and what's the value for you? So I think let's start with Isabella, and kind of from the producing perspective, why did you go B Corp? What's the value for Daterra, and for as a producer, what is the value?
Okay, for Daterra, it was kind of an evolution, because we've been sustainable since we were born. So sustainability and best practices are embedded in our strategy. So we are always in this net of people and subject about how to make a better business, but mostly because we know that agriculture can cause a lot of damage to the earth. So although we plant and produce coffee, we always had the vision that we wanted to prove that we could produce very good coffee in large scale with sustainability. And why large scale? Because I want to make sure that Wakefield and Darkwood will get the same cup of coffee every time they buy our coffee. We want to give this consistency, because this is what we believe it creates credibility to the client, safety. So we wanted to make sure that we could prove that agriculture can be done without damaging the planet. In fact, it can be a partner to the nature. So in 2015, we were awarded as the best sustainable farm in Brazil by a very known magazine. And we felt kind of empty afterwards. We said, oh my God, we reached what we wanted. So now what's next? And then because I'm also director of my family foundation, and I joined impact business as well, I learned about the B Corp movement. And when I read about it and I listened to that, I said, that's it. You know, you have to use your business to promote something good, more than just having a certified product or a certified, you have to be part of a chain. So the difficulty of the assessment and all that requires your company to be playing with your partners. So to Daterra to be B, I have to work with my community, I have to work with my suppliers, I have to push my suppliers to be B. And that's the amazing thing, because you actually use your business as a force for good. So we say that it's not only about producing the best coffee of the world, but producing the best coffee for a better world. And we've been very satisfied so far, because it pushes innovation within the farm. So the benefits of being B Corp is not only to create a better consumer, to do a good marketing, but also improves a lot the knowledge of being sustainable within the farm. We have different levels of knowledge about sustainability inside. So it's great to specifically push innovation, because the only way we are going to find the best equation to produce food to feed the world with sustainable practice is with innovation, research, and technology. And we have to have your team believing in that. So I'm a big fan of B Corp. I'm so happy to meet Debbie. I'm also a B Corp board member in Brazil. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation as well.
Amazing, it's a pleasure. And I think there is a lot to be said around that kind of impact you make by choosing to go towards and kind of impacting other people within the chain, which is incredible. But I think the point you make around innovation is also a really interesting one, in that, yeah, I guess when we do things and make choices, we have to innovate to kind of achieve those goals, which is, you know, quite valuable in the industry in this current day and age, really, to be flexible with that. If we move then to Phil, DRWakefield's perspective on the same exact thing. So why B Corp, and what's the value as an importer, really?
I think it provides a guidance to improve. I like what Tom said in the previous talk, that you can't manage what you can't measure. So as early adopters of fair trade, rainforest, and organic, we're left thinking, what's the next step of how to be sustainable and ethical? So B Corp was kind of the next place to go, really, after talks with Daterra, and thinking, actually, what is this B Corp? You don't see it, you know, put on a banana in a supermarket. So it's not right in your face. So we thought, yeah, this was the best next step, because we have fair trade, we have organic and rainforest on our supply. And then we have, say, Q grading, measuring our quality assessment, but what encompasses the whole thing. I think B Corp always, it promotes stakeholders rather than shareholders. So I think that just brings everything together. So yeah, that's pretty much the reason why we went to it, and we're only at the start of it. So hopefully we can always improve. So.
Yeah, and as a conduit kind of between the two sides, I think that's quite interesting to see kind of how that carries through in terms of decisions that Daterra make, and then into the importer. So then if we carry that on to the roaster, and we talked to Damien on the same topic. So for Darkwoods, why did you go B Corp, and what was the value for you?
Yeah, I think when we started the business and the roastery, we had all these ideas about doing things a little bit differently and trying to be a little bit more holistic, conscious of the fact that coffee is very much about a very, at times, longer supply chain, working very much globally, but also with a localized focus as well in terms of our own kind of customer base and the consumers that we're directly dealing with. And maybe 5-6 years down the line, we felt that we were doing some good things, but we actually looked around and said, we haven't actually got any genuine structure to this. We're not presenting it in the right manner. We're not actually challenging ourselves enough. There were so many ways in which we could be doing things better as a business, whether with our own employees, whether with our supply partners, export, import, producer partners, and also actually how we actually talk to our customers as well. And that might be in a business sense, cafes, restaurants, asking us challenging questions about sustainability, about the environment, about how we actually interact with our producers and things. And sometimes you actually have to lay down that foundation and say, actually we can quantify this. We can actually give you the information, present it in the correct manner. I think if there's one problem that we have, certainly in the specialty side of the coffee industry, it's got the point where we can all present things beautifully and photographs and talk a good game and say how wonderful and ethical we are, but we actually have to look at ourselves and say, well, how can we do things better? What does that actually represent? What does it mean? We certainly know that we're not perfect. There are so many things we can challenge ourselves to do the next 5-10 years, well into the future. That's part of, I think, B Corp has allowed us that. We're now looking at ourselves more intensely and saying, we're not good enough in that area. We're not good enough in this area. What can we do to achieve things better, so we can look back and we can look out to our customers and actually explain things a little bit better as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think there is kind of almost like a consistency between kind of 3 viewpoints in terms of that challenge, and kind of saying, let's push forward, let's be better, let's look at community, let's look at diversity, let's look at all these things and kind of be more holistic. And I guess then coming back to you, Damien, then how do you think B Corp would matter or does matter for your customer, or how can it matter for your customer, since you deal with actually the consumer that then really does impact everyone else across this value chain?
Yeah, again, I think there maybe has been a little bit of a challenge about familiarity, whereas myself and Ian feel that we've known B Corp for a number of years. Maybe certainly in the UK, that customer message, does the consumer perhaps know very much about B Corp movement? But you know what, in the last 6 months, in last year, that message is really starting to filter out to people. That understanding, we've just seen perfect examples within Waitrose, Ocado, things like that. That message is starting to get across to consumers a lot more. So yeah, being able to actually do that. Whereas for us, I think at the time when we started that process was about challenging ourselves. Now actually it's about, well, what can we do as a business as part of a global movement to move things on as a team, really do things a little bit better. So even the fact that we're forming more of a regional Yorkshire-based B Corp movement as well, to try and help in this locality to talk about the message a little bit more, and again to challenge us backwards so that consumers can ask us more questions.
Yeah, that's really great, actually, because you do have that kind of first point in conversation with the consumer, which makes such impact for then that coffee that's being produced at, say, Daterra, in terms of whether it's going to come to market here and again, the value of what that means to be B Corp. So that's really great. You're having those conversations and building that community. And I guess then when we look at the customer side, I mean, Phil, then Damien's your customer. So when we look at the same thing and you perceive the kind of value of that, what would you say then kind of coming back as the importer looking towards, because in the end, his customer is your customer's customer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, correct. And I think the main point of business and a sustainable business is for a returning customer. So if Damien's customer knows that he's doing the right thing with all the people in his supply chain, they're going to come back each year. I think sustainable's thrown out there a lot, especially in the coffee industry, but a lot of people aren't measuring it, and B Corp does measure it. So it gives, I guess, Damien the comfort that we're doing the right thing, and his customers that Darkwoods are doing the right thing. So it kind of it comes up all the way back to the supply chain, which I think is it's quite a rare certification out there at the moment.
Yeah, and then I guess from the producer's perspective, because obviously, so Isabella, you're in Brazil, and we're over here in the UK, and kind of all that distance, but the same kind of goals, it seems, across that value chain. So when you look at the customer being then, the importer, and eventually becomes the roaster, and eventually becomes the consumer, how do you see B Corp playing into that or mattering?
It's funny, this question, because most people want the answer, is it worthwhile to be a B Corp? Are you selling more? As if it was the only positive result of being a B Corp. And what we discuss internally is that what is the return that we expect from being a B Corp? It's not only on sales, it's more wider. And this is the differential of B Corp. It makes you see your business in a different and a wider perspective. So for Daterra, we believe that being a B Corp, really, you won't see you will see just a few people saying, I'm buying this because of being B. I'm really being honest. I hope in a couple of years it will grow, but so far it's not. So what we expect as a return, we expect pushing clients, for example, DRWakefield, Darkwoods, because we can make maybe a B coffee. Maybe at the end, we are gonna be with Debbie talking to retailers and having a B coffee in their retailers. And what does that mean? That means for Phil, for example, that they can believe in Daterra. They can believe that we're doing good. Daterra can believe in DRWakefield. And we have an alignment of principles and culture and way of working. And I guess already before the pandemic, but also with the pandemic, we must have trust in our chain, most of everything. We have to have trust, and we have to have transparency. So I believe that little by little, we will make sure that our customers, either being the indirect customers, not the end consumer, they will want to have a good relationship with the origin and with the producer. And by being B, it's a standard. I guess it's very important, because the harder is the assessment, everybody knows that it's really true what the farm is promising, for example, and evidencing. So it's a chain of results. Each stakeholder expects a result from being B. So we are very happy that 1 year ago, right, Phil, we said, oh, we are B. So what is B? So, and then I got the contact of James, and this is so great. This is one of our best results as being B, we now have, and Wakefield and Daterra has a long-term relationship regarding sustainability. We became supplier, we became partners because of this. So it's very nice to be able to build a trustful chain. And then the end consumer will perceive it in the perfect time.
I think it's really like great to hear also that like as a producer you're doing it quite a lot for kind of doing the right thing in that sense, and I think that's just it's a good thing to know about, you know, and Daterra is, you know, having been out there, a really sustainable farm. It's incredible what you guys do. So in fact the kind of next real kind of point of question, and actually leads on perfectly from what you've said, is maybe towards Damien, in that sense of like, what do you think that kind of B Corp chain and kind of a B coffee impact could make? If we can hear from Damien, then maybe Debbie has some thoughts as well, actually.
Yeah, it's always a difficult one, because I think we have to be honest with ourselves again that coffee can have negative impacts in a locality. As a coffee roaster, you know, the truth of the matter is we're still heavy kind of gas consumers, and we have to ask ourselves at this end, what can we do over time to start to address some of those impacts on the environment, to whether it's offsetting in the short term, that's change of equipment over time. You know, we're currently looking to invest in kind of heat pumps to actually absorb any heat that we're actually wasting within the roaster itself, and that we can reuse that, remove some of our gas boilers on site. But right back through that supply chain again, you know, asking ourselves the coffee itself, the impact on the particular farms, the estates, smallholders, larger farms. You know, we have to understand what impact that is happening and try and minimize that kind of footprint, because, you know, we all love drinking coffee. I think coffee brings people together. It brings conversation piece. You know, it is it's a type of product that we can't buy locally. We have to work further afield. So what can we do to minimize that impact and actually effectively address that over time? And that's really the challenge for all of us as a team, right through that supply chain.
Yeah, and I guess maybe Debbie, do you have some perspective on that as well, in terms of kind of that, you know, considering what you've said already with some of the products that are already kind of going that direction?
Yeah, sorry, could you just rephrase the question again?
Yeah, so when we're looking at a B Corp chain and we're looking at coffee, and we're looking at the opportunity of potentially having, let's say, a B coffee. So going all the way from the beginning to the end, we're looking at B, looking at how we can impact from this side all the way back and all the way forward. Do you see any kind of, what is your perspective on that in terms of like the kind of impact of that, or kind of, you know, what it could make as an impact?
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And so one of the things in the UK that we do is we have these things called working groups, and it's where kind of the community can come together and focus on specific points in a supply chain to try and kind of shift the needle or change a direction of conversation. And so kind of with that mindset of creating that kind of B coffee, of we have a circular economy working group that's then figuring out all the waste kind of pieces that come out of that supply chain conversation. What do you do with those? How do you make that more effective? How do you put that back into the system and make it regenerative? Or we have a regenerative agriculture working group that focuses on right from the field, like how do you do things differently? How do you do things better? And so I think it's an incredible idea to create that supply chain of B Corps, and we would love to encourage that. I think we do have some B Corps in our community who actually kind of get their suppliers to come on the journey with them and say, like, this is what we stand for, and this is what we want to do, and this is how we're doing it, and then let's work together. So you come on that journey with us. You don't have to become a B Corp, but we clearly have the same alignment in terms of what we believe in. So let's do that together. And then they join these working groups and then kind of learn from this cohort of over 100 other companies and start then applying those practices back and working with those suppliers to figure that out. So I think from a B Corp perspective, the idea of creating that chain, that would be the goal, to influence all those different parts of that supply chain, influence all those different sectors, and bring all of those different kind of moving parts of your ecosystem along. And I think it was Damien that said it earlier of, you know, being a B Corp is not about being perfect. It's not about getting everything right. And we're trying to raise that narrative that, like, as a company, you have to either be perfect or you're awful. Like, that's not what we're about. And that's kind of what the B Impact reports hopefully are going to try and narrate, is we're trying our best, we're doing our best, and some things will take time to shift. Some things we can do quickly, but this supply chain conversation and creating an end-to-end product that a consumer can trust, that would be the end goal, I guess. That would be incredible. And then I suppose linking to that on the other end is then getting those companies involved, like a Waitrose, where we have then a commercial working group that has any B Corp in our community that sells into like a Tesco's or a Waitrose or a Ocado or wherever. They're all coming together and saying, hey, there's 30 of us, we all sell into your company, let's have a conversation, let's talk about this. And so we've kind of got different groups at different points in that supply chain where we hope to the conversations can happen all simultaneously and really push things. But yeah, if you got a coffee one, that would be that would be incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's kind of, it's all kind of step-by-step progress, and that's quite kind of the key theme I think we see here. Now, Isabella, I know you have to go soon, but I do want to ask you one quick question.
I'm so sorry.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead. Last question.
One quick question for us just before you head off is just really like, it'd be great to know what, Daterra is looking to do or use B Corp in the future, because as we've said, it is a thing that always improving, always more and more kind of like focus on kind of becoming better with B Corp in that sense. So does Daterra have any idea or kind of thought around kind of how they want to use B Corp in the future, or how it's going to impact the future and its values?
We just think that internally we have been doing a lot of things, especially with the COVID. But for the future, what we wish is more and more actually having the chance to build a B coffee from seed to cup. And that means that we want to extend that, because only when we reach the end consumer, then we are going to reach and create the awareness of being a B Corp. And I guess it's a wave we have to create. We're just being born, I believe. It's a movement. It's like we are talking, like Debbie said, you're talking to especially people, most people don't understand. They have different agendas, especially in Brazil. People now are only talking about ESG, which is, by the way, the subject that I'm going to talk right now. So kind of people are a little bit confusing. So I think we all need to first to start a dialogue about B Corp, to align everybody in the same knowledge, to explain, to differentiate from other certifications as well, to align expectations. But as much as personally, I'm very anxious to see this growing, professionally, I know it's a learning journey. And I guess only being together, exchanging information, you're going to promote this learning.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Isabella. We won't keep you any longer, but it's been really great to have you.
I really enjoyed. I feel so bad that I have to leave, but it was such a coincidence, and it was great seeing you all here. And you are more than invited to come to Daterra when you are, because we cannot go to London, although I love London, this first city after Brazil, maybe not Brazil anymore, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll be seeing a B coffee.
Yes, no, we're going to do a B. We are going to be
Brilliant.
B.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. And I guess carrying on the conversation, Phil. So in that sense, with DRWakefield, same kind of thing, really. Like, how does DRWakefield plan to now, being a new B Corp, use that B Corp in the future, and how is that going to impact maybe the company or its future or the values?
I think it just, with B Corp, it makes you take a step back, really, I think, and look at different parts of your business. We have so many samples we send out every day. I believe I asked you this, Deanna, yesterday. Apparently, we send out over 4,000 coffee samples a year. So if we can use a B Corp, company that does, sustainable packaging going forward, that'll be a great thing. Also, we're looking at our carbon footprint as well. So I think, we've only been B Corp for around 6 months now, but we're already starting to look at ways in which we can improve. So I think small steps, instead of having about 10 steps to go, maybe pick a couple and then actually do them is the best way forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with that, I think probably then we can turn to the roastery and ask Damien how basically the same question, really, like what from your perspective and from Darkwood's perspective.
Yeah, again, some of that feeling that we can make some sort of impact on things and how we relate to our supply partners. So as a good example, it's over 10 years ago when DRWakefield via Priscilla introduced me to Cafe Feminino coffee when they first imported into the UK, and I as a coffee buyer at the time and roaster had the chance to put a coffee out to market, buying from women only associations and cooperatives, but that journey never stopped. You know, it's something that from where I used to work now into Darkwoods as well, we go back to that association, that community year after year now to buy the coffee, and we couldn't do that without Wakefield's help. But I think we challenged ourselves with B Corp to say, well, putting something back, what does that represent? So we decided to that 2% of our annual turnover now would go back into either producer origin sort of projects or ones in our local community as well. So Cafe Femenino Foundation, we're very keen on reinvesting in projects on the ground there. That also gives, again, a visible story that we can talk about that supply chain, present things in front of our customers. And I think they feel that kind of, that story, that association, that connection really comes from where the coffee comes from, right through to them drinking that cup of coffee. That's really important. And from a local community sense as well. And that might be for us putting back into the local welcome centre. So, Huddersfield's always been, a wonderful place for immigration from around the world. We're really proud of our heritage around here, but we've, in the pandemic, these are really hard times. Food banks on the ground are becoming increasingly important to what everybody does, and access to information, things like that, mental health, well-being right now. So we can't solve world problems, but B Corp does help us to think about what we can actually do in our own little way, both in this area, but also where we source our coffee from with the help of Wakefield. So yeah. That's
really great. And I think there's something really to be said about those kind of, the impact that you can make locally that actually makes big impact, right? Because if everyone makes those kinds of choices within their local, that actually does the big impact across. So it's really great to hear that that's kind of, push forward those values for Darkwoods in that sense. And I think you brought up a really, really interesting point when you started to talk about Cafe Femenino and kind of the impact of that. And that kind of almost brings me into the question for Debbie, really, which is, where does B Corp sit in a world of certification?
Interesting. I think it's a big field. There's so many different types of certifications. There's so many different things you can do. And I think where we're most proud of the community is the fact that you have to constantly recertify. So you can't rest on your laurels. You can't just kind of get a pass and then fine. We might get some companies that are a little bit like that. And if they want to sit at the 80, fine, but at least they come on the journey. But I think in the world of certifications, we're really proud of the fact that our companies commit to doing the best that they can always. And the second you step into the community, that's really like the beginning of your journey. You kind of maybe take a year and a half to do the certification the first time around, but when you step into that community, that's where it starts, and you begin to kind of create that culture within your company. If you didn't already have it, you might do already, but that's where we kind of begin that journey. And so I think in the world of all these different certifications, it's very it sits really nicely alongside a lot of them, so like a fair trade and things like that. And so we collaborate with a lot of those different certifications, which we love, because they believe in the same things that we do, and they're kind of trying to reach the same end goal. But I think our certification obviously has that really big picture piece of trying to shift capitalism and to try and reinvent the system that we live in and to make it different, because we can't keep going as we are, and we need things to change. And businesses like the ones on this call and the ones listening are the ones that are going to be able to create that influence and change and have all those different conversations. And even just this one right now, there's so many different people within this conversation that are thinking about that, and that's incredible. So if every B Corp in our community, and we've got 500, if every single one of those is then speaking to their supply chains and their kind of suppliers and all these different things, there's such a potential for impact. And I think that's where our certification is really valuable, is the impact it can create, the transformation it can create, and the bringing everyone on that journey through authentically doing it through proof, not just getting a certification, sticking it on your product, and then So I think that's where our certification is, we believe, a little bit different.
Yeah, because you kind of have to always be improving, right? And every single time you go to recertify.
Yeah, and your score can go down, like so you're on a specific track. So say you're like 50 employees, when you go above 50, you're on a new track, so the questions slightly change. So then you actually could redo the assessment in 3 years, have more employees, and your score goes down, because as you get bigger, there are more questions that will be asked of you around like policies that you offer your employees or the protections that you do and the way that you work. So your score is never kind of a set thing, and it can go down. You can lose your certification if you don't keep up with it. So I think that's also really important, that it isn't a surety. You have to work for it. And I think by wanting to work for it, and I can't speak to this because I haven't done it myself, but I'm sure the gentleman on this call can, that I think when you go through all that effort to attain it, it just is so worth it. And then you value that more so because of the kind of graft you put in to get it. So yeah, that's slightly biased.
I think that,
but
yeah, that's actually really good. There's a really good question point towards to Phil and Damien in terms of that, because I mean, you had to do quite a lot to get there. So I mean, if we start, Phil, in terms of that journey, and maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was quite a long one, but I think it took us roughly 4 months to do, but I feel like we had the good structure of certifications in before, so the Fair Trade, Organic, and Rainforest. But I didn't just do it myself. I had help from others because good help from our HR team, because she knows far more about the employee benefits that we give, even though I'm one of them. So no, I think it's good. And I just want to go back to one point that Damien said actually about buying Cafe Feminine for so long, and that would probably be from 2 different companies. I'm guessing a lot of our industry is quite cutthroat in a way of specialty, because it's solely based on taste. So what you have one year, you might have a lot that tastes great, but next year, as it's an agricultural product, it might be slightly different, but then a lot of, customers will then move away. I don't think that's really a sustainable approach. I think as a B Corp, you would then look at your supply chain and go, it might not be as good this year, but we're going to work with our producers so they can continue to grow. So I like the way Damien continued to support and has done, even though the harvests have been, different throughout the years. So
there's definitely a really good point around that. Damien, did you have anything to add? Or?
I think, following on from that, it's a really important part of what we do is to our producer partners, we return to year after year, whether, good times or bad, if the quality dips, then the question is more about, well, what can we actually do to help? But as a roastery and as coffee buyers, we're not a closed shop either. We're always on the lookout for new supply partners as well. But seasonality, we just go back to the same people every year, ask them what they want. But hopefully they would like us to buy more coffee from them. Our customers have obviously a strong role to play in that as well. So, and that might be kind of buying larger volumes of coffee for kind of our core blends, the ones that are familiar on the shelves and in the local cafes and things year on year, and then buying micro lots from those same producers as well. Something of that little bit more special, unique that we can present in that manner, changing year on year. But no, that's really important to us. But that challenge, again, we talked about point scoring. I think we now realize that we have to go back to a lot of our team here, and it is a growing team as well. We've been lucky to be able to bring in new people in the last 12 months, even in these kind of challenging times, and everybody has a new thought process and new ideas and things. And actually, we can't do it ourselves as owners of the business, directors, things like that. We need to involve our team as well, and they're full of amazing ideas. And we won't increase our point score unless we do actively question ourselves and ask them how we can actually get better at what we do, because that is part of that process.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for all the input and the ideas. I think it's quite lovely to have, the whole kind of 3 points in the chain here. Looks like we're wrapping up now to go ahead and head off to lunch. Just as a side note, for anyone who's joining us in the afternoon session, we'll be on the afternoon link. So it's a different link than the morning. If you don't have that link, just pop onto Eventbrite and you can go ahead and grab that link, and we'll continue conversations in the afternoon through several other subjects. Otherwise, thank you so much to our panelists for the time and the insight. Right. See you all after lunch.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you all later.